Welcome to the classroom, everybody. Caroline Sharkey here, and we're going to be making this red poppy project for the classroom today. I'll show you how I make the textural fabric in the background, and then we'll do the applique and then the thread painting. Just a little project to get you started on making the confetti stylized surfaces that I make in a lot of my work. So this is the project that we'll be making. I've got lots of prep done so that we have lots of samples to keep us going so that we can move along quite quickly. This is the background fabric, so it's the green background, and this is the stabilizer that goes onto the back of that fabric, so it makes it nice and stable. This is an iron-on stabilizer, and that goes on the back of all of my work that I use this process with. So I've just had that one for you to see. This one's been ironed up, so you can see the back of it's already got that on it, and that's ready to go, so I can start designing on that. And just adjust that a little bit. Okay, so here we go. So the cutting of this confetti that I use on these backgrounds is the process that I'll start off with. I do have some already cut so that I can move along more quickly, but these are some of the fabrics that I have in the kit. Some of these will vary over time, but these are the special fabrics that I have. We also have yarn that we put in, and some plastic sequins that I have here as well to use. Okay, so the cutting of the fabric is quite simple, but it's just that tedious little part of getting ready. So I'm just getting prepped for it to start. Okay, so I'll get all of those special fabrics. These are organzas and rayons and things to cut. So I'm going to just move that out of the way for a moment, and I'm going to cut these up all together. So I'm folding the fabric, and then I'm cutting that fold, and that lets me have a little stash of fabric that I can cut quite organized from, and then I start cutting that confetti out of that. Like I said, I have some already prepped, so I'll just get this bit done. You can see, I mean, everybody will cut it differently. Everyone will cut their own style. It's just a matter of trying to cut it, you know, in that confetti sort of size. Doesn't have to be obviously the shape of confetti, but it is that snippets of fabric. And you can see by cutting them all in little layers like this, I can control, you know, what's happening a little bit. Okay, so that's all prepped. Now these fabrics sometimes sort of stick together a little bit when they're cut, so I like to tease them apart, and that gets them all separated nicely. Okay, I'm just going to cut those, and I'm going to use my prepared fabric. Okay, so let me just get this around the right way. Okay, so I've got my background prepared with the stabilizer on the back, and that's in the kit. You will prep that up, and the instructions will come with that as well. That's if you choose a kit. So then I'm going to start moving this onto the layer of that background fabric. So these are the snippets that we're going to be laying on and designing our leaf litter type background for this project. I cut all sorts of fabrics, and I cut them for all sorts of purposes. So depending on what the fabric is used for, depends on what kind of collection that I find to cut up as well. Okay, so here I have prepped some more fabric, the cottons that were, the batiks that were in there. Another thing to remember when you're cutting up these sorts of fabrics, or for this reason, is to have a look at the back of the fabric so that you can see what the back of the fabric looks like, because Double-sided fabrics like batik or hand dyes, they have true colour on both sides, whereas printed fabric sometimes has a lighter background or a much whiter background, and cutting that up, you will get a big variation. Okay, so we're going to sprinkle this on now and just create a little, sort of like a garden, I guess, for that beautiful flower to sit, and prepping that up. Okay, then there's the yarn. So these are Lurex threads that are the brand of Wonderful, these threads, but anything that's shiny and glitzy, and obviously it's optional to put in whatever you like, otherwise these are in the kit. And I cut those up, so I wound them around to loop them a little bit around my finger to make a circular sort of loop, just to give myself a little bit of control when I'm cutting them. So I've done that, then I cut them. It just helps me cut layers and layers and multiples of thread. And this adds a lovely texture as well as a different sorts of added surface. And I've got this other colour as well. So those three are in that background. And the beauty of that is, you know, you're putting something like that into your work, but you don't necessarily see exactly what it looks like because it's blending in and it's completely changing what it does. You'll also notice that I'm keeping that all off the piece at this point, and that's so that I can then design with those as well, add them to where I would like to. Mind you, this sort of project lends itself to sort of being a little bit more mixed together, so the whole lot could be all cut, mixed together and added on. Okay. So then we have the plastic sequins. Now, anything you put into this mix at this stage, if the needle will punch it, like if the needle will stitch across the top of it and stitch it into the piece, you can put them in, okay? I'm trying to separate them, make sure they're separate, because otherwise they'll be quite thick, and that's when the needle might break. Okay, I've used these forever. Like, I never put a sequin on work without doing it like this. Okay, so there we are. We've got our background laid out. That's the background that I planned for this workshop, okay? So that means we've got all our snippets in there, our yarn and our sequins. Now this is where I cover this to hold it down so we can stitch it, because this obviously needs to be stitched and I need a surface that I can stitch. So this is the water-soluble Violene that I use. Now this Violene is like a fabric, so it's lovely and secure, sits nicely on the surface, holds the stitching nicely, pins down well. Okay, so this is the water-soluble Violene. Now this will dissolve in water, so that's why I trap these threads down in under here to get ready to stitch them. As I said, I've done lots of samples to just get the process done in the time frame of showing you as much as we need to do to get this project made today. So I'm just pinning. Now I'm pinning in a lengthwise direction around the edge so that it holds all those snippets inside that case of water soluble and the background, and pinning it around the edge in lengthwise direction, as well as pinning some across the surface of the top just to hold things in place so it doesn't bag in one end if it moves too much. Because we're stitching a small piece, it's not necessary to really go overboard with the pins, but you know, all those little areas now have sequins in them, and that just holds them as much as possible in place. So that's the prep for getting it ready for sewing, and then we will get the sewing machine happening. Okay, so I've got one here prepped that has the pins in it still, and also I've started to stitch. So I've started to stitch this with a thread colour that's quite similar to the fabrics, so that we can't see the this thread work is not really important in the fact of seeing it. It's just a matter of getting it stitched so that it holds that background together again. Okay, so I've got the sewing machine set up for free motion stitching, and that means I've got the darning foot on and I've dropped the feed dogs, okay, which on your normal domestic machine you'll have that need to do that. So with this I'm going to now do a little bit of stitching across the surface, and it's a matter of just really taking your time. It doesn't matter to me whether I cross over or whether it's stitched in one go or I go back over it a couple of times. It's the matter of keeping the fact that it will stay together is the most important part. So however you feel comfortable moving that fabric, whether it's in a circular motion or even in a longer sort of back and forward movement. Different sort of shape, meandering sort of direction. Whatever fits for you to get that connected over. Okay. All right. So, just so that I've shown you that, and now this is what we have. We have this piece that's completely stitched across, okay, and it's completely, all sides have been covered from edge to edge. It's completely stitched. So then this is ready for washing. Okay.